here. We're also adding a little bit of shadow. And because it's a cartoon, so we do want to sort of exaggerate. Now, see, sometimes when you're dealing with a digital tablet, it will make a straight line instead of a natural curved line. So sometimes when you're dealing with a digital tablet, sometimes it will default that way. I have found that it's normal. I try not to get frustrated when it happens because it's normal and it happens every so often. I just undo it and move on. I'm making this bigger. So the brush, I just pressed the outside bracket. And now I'm going in, doing the inner bracket just to make it smaller again. Now I'm changing the colors, making a straight line. Now I'm making it bigger again, this brush. Now I'm going to make it smaller again. We're going to go around the nose. We're going to go above the eyebrows. We're going to go between the eyebrows here, and we're going to change the color, and we're going to make it lighter. This is just artistic license. His face doesn't really look like that. I'm just kind of doing that. Again, we don't want it to look exactly like the picture anyway. We want to make it look completely different. So, making it bigger. And notice how it's not completely smooth right here. That's okay. We're going to make it smooth later. Right now, we're just laying down a little bit of paint. Let's add maybe a little bit of this lip color. Now you might be saying, why are you putting the color of his lips on his forehead? Well, it's sort of a Photoshop thing. Like, you know, you can mix and match when you're dealing with paint. It doesn't have to be the same color as everything that you saved. I mean, you can throw in a little bit of this blue. We'll put a little bit here. We'll put a little bit here. We'll make it a little bigger. I mean, it kind of looks like he was beat up, so we're not going to leave it that way. We'll probably put something light over it. But having that blue undertone kind of gives it a little bit of... It looks more real now, but it's actually not. It actually is one color underneath one other color that's on top of an actual photograph. And then we're going to apply other colors on top of it. So you end up creating sort of half real, half altered reality. There's other ways to do this too. You don't have to put your swatches in a library. You could just press the letter I and just manually go over the page like this. You could click on something, click B, fill something in, press I again, pick another color, press B, make it bigger. You could blend it that way as well. So that's another way you can do it. Like, see how I just clicked it, did it, and I didn't have to make swatches? That's another way you can do it. There's many ways to do a lot of things in here, but I find that dealing with swatches is faster actually, so that's why I do it. So I'm gonna go over and I kind of know what colors I'm gonna use, and by having colors already chosen, it kind of keeps it more cartoony because you're not dealing with so many colors that it's realistic. You end up reducing the number of colors you use, but having enough where it's recognizable as a person, but you have, you know, few enough colors where you can tell it's a cartoon and it's not completely realistic. Alright, so I'm going to press D to give it some black, and we're going to make this smaller because I'm going to give them sort of a chin line. I'm going real soft in here so it has real feathered edges. And we're going to do the same thing here. I'm going to come and press H, bring it down. Notice how when I came down, I'm going to zoom in so you can see this. When I came down and pressed the brush, it didn't go all the way to the edge. there's sort of like this light area that didn't touch where the line is, and so I want to fill that in because it's just sort of a preference. So I'm going to do my inner bracket to make my brush almost as small as the line but a little bigger. I mean it's at 3, which is the exact same. So we're just going to draw as if we're connecting the black overlay with the line, so they kind of look like they're merging. But if you look, they're not actually merging, because look, there's our line and there's our color, but our color is underneath our line, so our line on top is going to make it look like we're staying inside the lines. So what I'm doing is applying a little bit of shadow. I'm going near the line work, and I'm adding just a hint of color. This adds the impression of shadow. I'm going to come in here and I like to create really sharp corners around the collar of business shirts. I think that it just looks really good in cartoons and drawings in general. We can make it sharper by pressing E and erasing all the way down into sort of a curve. I don't like to erase from the bottom usually, like I just did there. I like to like come up halfway between sort of this area and that area. And now look how sharp that is. We can do the same thing over here. Alright. Notice how I didn't draw the line for right here. I kind of forgot it, so I'm going to go in and just do that by going to this line layer, and we're going to go to our brushes and go to our cartoon line, or I think it was our 3 cartoon. I'm just going to just briefly do that. So I'm going to hide the color and go here and just sort of, I didn't need to hide the color, I'm just doing that. Alright, so now I'm going to go into color, and I could go ahead and color his jacket, but I think I'll hold off on that. I just want to create a little bit more shadow. Let's press B. I'm going to put a little bit of, oops, we're still in this, so let's go to the new brush, the 9 soft. Middle layer, it's got a color. I'm going to make this smaller, so now we're dealing with 4 pixels instead of 9. But the reason why we didn't want to use the other one and it was 4 pixels is because this one has soft, it has a hardness of 0, so it's very soft, and the line work had a hardness of 100, so it was a very hard line without faded edges. Alright, so as you can see, we can still see the gruff under the face, and we don't want that to show. We don't want the stubs of his hair actually showing for this, because then it will look like we just traced on top of the picture. And we have, but we don't want it to look that way. So there's a few ways I like to trick, and I'm going to share them with you here. So I'm going to zoom in. We're going to go about 9. Yeah, so we have our brush at 9, our softness is still at 0. We're going to come in a little bit closer, and we're going to open our libraries again so we see all the different colors. And I'm going over sort of I'm using a sort of a zigzag. It's sort of a soft zigzag. If I were going hard, if I were pressing full pressure on my pen, it would look like this. But I'm not doing that because then you can see it. So I'm going real soft over sort of the pores of his skin, so you can't see them as much. And I'm using similar colors to what's actually there. It's a little bit darker, so it covers it too and gives it more coverage. I don't want to use that color, it's too light, so I'm going to undo. And we'll go to maybe this color. We're going to use a bigger color. There we go. So sometimes I use big sweeping movements and other times very small light strokes. We're going to go and we're going to do a little bit with his face. We're going to do sort of the same thing we did with his neck. And then we'll go and we'll start to smudge the underlayer. And you'll start to see the huge difference that will make. But what we're doing now is creating something that's not going to be altered when we smudge the underlayer. So this is going to give it that good cartoon look that we're looking for. We're adding a little bit of shadow under his lip and around the chin. It's a little red, but that's okay. We're going to be adding other colors with it. Sometimes adding reds and pinks into a face and even a little bit of orange can really make it come alive. So don't be afraid to use reds and oranges and pinks and unusual colors when you're painting a face. It doesn't all have to be flesh toned, you know. And you could add a little bit of green, it would look really good too. I'm adding a little bit of soft pinks where the highlight's going to go. And I will be adding other highlights later when we're doing the finalization on this. Making this brush smaller. I like to go from big to small to big to small, so sometimes the brush is really big, sometimes it's very small, but one thing that it has every time is a very soft hardness. The hardness is at 0. I do not like to work with 100% hardness when I'm painting, unless I'm filling something to be all one color. When I'm doing something like this, is something as detailed as photographs and doing portraiture of people. I like to use lots of colors because people are dynamic. You know, people don't usually have one color of skin. And even though you can do a cartoon that will show one color, the style that I'm showing is how to paint in Photoshop. And, you know, I like to see a lot of types of paint when I'm looking at a picture. I don't like to just look at one color. So I like to put in many, many, many colors. And when you're looking at a beard that's been shaved like this, there's a lot of colors going on. And as you can see, we've added a lot of colors to the picture. We're in B. And pressing H to move this. Smaller. I'm pressing softly, going down. We're going over this sort of curved area that holds the nostril, and I like to make that kind of like a brownish red rather than a black, because the curve itself isn't black on our face, but this creates sort of a vector look. And I've done the same thing here around the nostril. So we just kind of come down and can fill it in. We could use black here, but look how good it looks with sort of that grayish brown color. I think it really looks good. And we'll do the same thing here. And this is the smudge tool. You can press the letter M, and you can also make the brush bigger or smaller by using the same shortcut we use for the brush, which is the inside and outside brackets. We're going to go back to B. and I'm just adding in a little bit of different colors. And you can see you really can't go really wrong when you're dealing with colors you've already chosen, because you're not going to put something in there that doesn't belong, because these were all actual swatches from his face from the original photo. So everything we're doing is sort of complementary to his face. If you want to clean up some areas, sometimes just going really lightly with a big brush can help forgive any areas where it just looks like paint has been overlapping. I'm just lightly tapping right now. I'm not even giving big strokes. I'm just tapping. And what that does is it allows me to kind of give it a little bit of dimension without making it look like I'm painting. But I'm painting, but it's very deliberate, and I'm pressing and just light, maybe not that one. If I wanted to do that, though, I could lower the opacity to like 39. And now look, it doesn't, like, these are different shades, but they came from the same brush. And it's just a nice way of doing that. Alright. We'll do his eyes now. So, one of my favorite things about doing cartoons is doing the eyes. I like to go in here, and we're going to zoom in. We're going to press X so that white is the color in our foreground. We're going to make this brush real small, probably like a 1 or 2. I like to usually do 2, it's good enough. And remember, when you're doing one eye, you can just zoom in real close. When you do the second eye, you kind of want to be looking at the other eye. Not that close, maybe that close. Okay, so we've pressed B. We're going to check our layers, make sure we're still in color. We are. So when you're doing a cartoon eye, I like to go, oh wait, we won't put this at 100. Put this at 100, put this at 100. There you go. When you're doing cartoon eyes, you want a white area of the eyeball outside this iris and pupil area. So I like to go like this. And his eye actually has white under it, like that. We'll do this side. Once the eyes have been properly cartooned, then the whole face begins to look like a real cartoon. So this eye is still looking a little different than this one, so I'm going to just give this a little bit of white, and we're going to take away some of the white that I've given it by adding a little black. So we're going to just fill in a little black right here and along the bottom. And what I just did is sort of soft feathered the bottom of the eyes. And this kind of gives it a little bit of a form for the eyes. There we go. And it hides some of the redness of his actual eyes in the picture anyway. Sometimes pictures can bring out interesting colors. If we look closely at his eye, zoom in so you can see this. Let me zoom in. If you look at the colors of the eye here, there's many colors going on. There's like a brown, a red, burnt sienna, tan. There's an olive green, a very dark tree green. We got sort of a dark gray, light gray, brown gray. If you look, there's a lot of colors here. And we're not going to be using all those colors. We're going to pick one color and we're going to say that's what his eye color is. And then we'll add maybe a second or a third. But when we're doing cartoons, you know, it's okay to use fewer when you're dealing with an eye. So we're going to go with maybe this color to start. And we're going to zoom out. I just wanted to zoom in to show you all the colors going on. I'm going to color in his eye. I'm going to go and put white right here, a little bit of black right here. Just going to add a little black. And I'm gonna add like a little of this gray, because we know there was a little gray in the eye, so we're gonna just lightly sweep an area with gray. Now if we zoom in, let's see what we've done. Doesn't that look a little different than what we saw before? Like now it looks uniform. It looks like it's different shades of brown rather than a bunch of shades of a bunch of colors. It looks less realistic, but it'll look really good. So it kind of pays off. And plus black, we're gonna give this, to get the same color as this side, we're gonna just press the letter I. We're gonna pick an area. Let's pick maybe that color. We're gonna go H, slide it over, press B. Okay, I'm gonna zoom out so I can see both eyes at the same time. I'm pressing D for this outside one to be black, and we're gonna just give it a circular form, and we're gonna add a little bit of this brown, which is slightly different. And we're gonna press white, we're gonna give it a highlight here, and then we're gonna give it that sweeping gray. Let's give it a little bit gray like that. Right now I'm just pressing I and I'm picking colors and just kind of drawing with it. That's the thing with paint, you can kind of pick colors that are nearby. Like I'm pressing up here I, and I'm pressing a little area in his eyelid, and I'm gonna just sort of color his eyelids red. His eyelids are not really red, but we want to make it look similar to the original photo without it looking exactly the same. So instead of seeing a million colors, we might just see, you know, two and then many shades of it. So here we're kind of adding a little brown, soft medium brown around his eyes. All right. Let's see how we look from far away. So he's starting to look like a cartoon. Starting to get there. We haven't even done his hair yet. And then we'll do his suit and it'll look really cool. Alright, so let's do his eyebrows real quick. All I did was just lightly just kind of paint that in. It doesn't have to look too realistic. We're gonna have a little bit of, we use the same color over his eyes. And if you look at the color picker, you know, just clicking the color and looking at it, we can see that it's sort of in the orange color palette range. It's not brown, it's not tan, it's not in the yellow range, it's kind of in the orange range. And that really tends to give something a more realistic cartoon color than when you're dealing with something in the yellows. Alright, so let's do the hair. Hair will be pretty easy since we've already colored in the black. As a line work, we're going to go in here and click on, let's do brown. That might work, but I kind of like this one. Let's take a look. Let's look at, so this one I'm going to add to my swatches because it's another color of his hair I kind of want to add. Let's see how that one looks. Yeah, his hair is mostly, we'll say black. So what we'll do is we're going to start by putting something that's almost black down. We'll do like this dark gray. The hex color is 1F, 1F, 1F. I like to use almost black so that you can still see the line work. See how you can still see that line work right there? It doesn't all get hidden. Otherwise, we would have done all that work for nothing. So we're coloring it in all the way to the edge. And we're going to go over his hair with some highlights and stuff so that you can still see those other colors. It won't just be one color. Now I'm going to give it, so all up into this area it was kind of hard with it, but I'm going to be real soft with it when I start to go near the hairline. We're giving it like a soft feather. And this way, you know, you can tell that you have traced this image and it looks like them, but because the hair is all one color, it makes it look like it's sort of been illustrated. So it's half illustrated and, you know, half colored in, and actually it'll be less than half. I like to keep the part that's original to be like under 30%, just so that there's no copyright issues and it's just really different looking. I don't like to make it look exactly the same. I do like to have a lot of artistic changes to it, so I like to have it be like way more than half, you know. But right now it's about half, but we're going to be adding more. See, we're covering the original with paint, essentially. We're tracing over it. It's a great technique for learning how to do portraitures of people and getting as close as you can to realistic. You know, when you can do this thing without even tracing, like this can be done without tracing. You could go over just sort of eyeballing a picture next to an image and just freestyling it, and that's fun too. But this is a little quicker. Alright, so we're going to zoom out. Let's see how it looks so far. Alright, so we still can't see the line work from far away. If we zoom out, it doesn't even really look like we drew it. So we're going to kind of zoom in a little bit. Zoom in. Not zoom in, but like, you know, make it bigger, make it smaller, zoom in. Alright, I didn't like that. Let's try this. Yeah, this color that we picked, even though it looks a little green on here, it actually looks really good in his hair because it goes well with that dark gray. So now we have a little, we're going real soft, we're not going hard, just da 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 da, a little light. And what this will do is when we zoom out and we look at the image from far away, we'll get to see the line work. It won't just be eliminated by the dark gray that we used. We're going to add other colors now because we are artists and we take liberty with color. So I would recommend even using some of the colors from the face. Sometimes it just, like, see, I just added some of the color from, you know, around his face, and I'm putting it around his hairline. these little touches add uniqueness and sort of an alternative to line work when you're dealing with hairlines. You can do a hairline with line work. I've done it many times, but this is another way of sort of doing it, is creating, see what I did there? It's kind of like dark here and then light here. We're going to add a little bit, it'll be even lighter because we're going to add some white there at the end. But for now, we're just going to kind of do that. And a little bit darker down there. I'm going a little color lighter than the black, but I do kind of want to add a little black in here under the eyebrow because that's a very shadowy place on the face, especially in photographs. It's one of the darkest areas of the face, sort of like the inner eyebrow. So we're going to just make that darker. And we're going to darken the areas of the outer and inner sort of lid area. We're going to add a little different color so it doesn't just look black. And a little brown, kind of give it a little bit of texture. Alright. So now that we've done that, let's zoom out and see how it looks. Nice. Let's go ahead and do the suit real fast. So we'll do eye, get this color going. Oops. Okay, so I'm going to undo this because I have an idea. If I do my color all the way to the end here, I'm going to lose all that shadow work I just did. So when this happens, just create a new layer under the color, but still above the original, and I'm going to call this color 2. And then what I'll do is I will merge these 2 layers together after I've done the technique. I'll probably leave it up for a little while and until I have finished drawing his entire suit, and then we'll merge it. And see, now I don't lose. Or do I? No, I'm doing the wrong area. See, that's why I did that. I was like, why am I losing it? Okay, so we're going to go color 2. See, now it doesn't. See how it still kept the layer of shadow here? It's okay that we're going over outside the line because we're going to be coloring that white. I'm going to make this bigger just to make it faster. I'm going to make it smaller so we don't go too far outside the edge. Don't worry about it going over outside frames and stuff. You can always go in and touch that up at the end. Now I'm filling this with white. It's not off-white, it's a pure white, which tends to look pretty cool in photographs of cartooned people. And then for this tie, we're gonna just make it one color. We can always add, I like to make, when I'm dealing with colors, I like to think of it in terms of 3. So maybe not one color, but like tricolor. So when I say one color, I'm usually referring to a compound color. So when I say like, it'll be like one color, it'll be like this, it won't have the pattern. So when I say tricolor, I'm referring to highlight, midtone, and shadow. So that there would be sort of midtone. And then for like a shadow, we'll pick like a darker color. So the way I like to pick my color, I'm going to go back and show you that. I clicked on the this foreground color, and then I went diagonal about 3/4 of an inch. And you can pick something that's 3/4 of an inch in any direction, and it would work well as a shadow. But if you go sort of southeast, you get a really good shadow. So if our color started here, you could go around 3/4 of an inch to the southeast of that color and get a really good shadow color that's complementary. So we'll just kind of do that. I'm just sort of drawing in a shadow. I'm going real light. The lighter I like to go from light to dark, usually, in this kind of situation. So I guess the first color we did wasn't really midtone, it kind of looks like a highlight, and that looks like a shadow. So now we'll make a shadow of our shadow. So we're gonna come in and just make that brush a little smaller, and we're gonna add a second shadow. And see, now it's starting to look three-dimensional. So when I say one color, these 3 colors that we just did are all complementary of the same color. They're just sort of different shades of it. So it actually is 3 colors. I like to, when I'm doing color on cartoons, I usually like to do 3 colors at a minimum at a time. So even though this suit is one color currently, it will have many colors when we're done, or at least 3. So this here, I just colored over the line work. So let's we'll do a color under the color. How about that? When that happens, just make a new layer. Why is it doing that again? Did I put the line on the original? I did. Okay, that's why. So to fix that, we'll just make sure we click on line, and we'll just trace using cartoon line brush. See, I had drawn on the image instead of this layer. That's okay. We'll just trace it. Although it's a little bigger, so I'm going to just undo those and go. I just reduced the brush to be 1 pixel smaller so it can trace it more accurately. And then here. Alright, so that's traced. Now we'll just go here. Actually, we can even delete that because we won't need a whole new layer. We'll go to color 2 that we were on. We're pressing I to click on this. We'll press B, and now we'll make it a little bigger. There we go. We might have to make that line a little darker, but that's okay. I don't like all 3 of those lines anyway, so we'll just go up here to line, and we'll erase this one. And we'll erase this one. We'll just keep the outside one. So I imagine that his jacket would probably come down like that. And this would probably come down like this. And brush a little bigger. Now notice that it's not very faded on the end. If we look at the brush settings on this, we've got our hardness at 100. That's okay. When you're filling in and you're not trying to mix the paint, it's okay to just have the hardness at 100. You only really need it at 0 when you're blending. Alright, we'll come back down and get that in a minute. We're going to go ahead and do the line work. We're going to go up here to cartoon line, so it goes back to 4. Whoops, we're going to do this on 3, remember? So let's go to line, and we're going to finish drawing the original lines. I'm just going to pretend I know it's there. So it's okay if that line looks kind of wobbly, because we're going to go in and clean it up. All we do is press E to erase, and you can just erase the parts that you want gone. And we're not going to even make that super smooth. We're going to leave it kind of crooked, and that makes it look like it has different line widths, which is what Illustrator can automatically do that we can't seem to automatically do in Photoshop yet. Or if there is, I haven't learned it. This is the way I do it, just kind of manually do it. Let's see, there we go. We're gonna go in and, oh, you know what, we can finish the tie while we're here. Let's go ahead and just do that. Alright, and we got eye. We're gonna go ahead and color the tie. So we want to go to the color layers. We never want to really, actually I'm gonna do that on color too, since we're going under the shadow we made. Whoops, too far up. When it does that, you kind of want to just stay within the lines. So one thing that I have is this, it's a previous cartoon, and I'm going to just show it for a minute. And the reason I do that is so that I can see that I'm painting over everything correctly. If you put a colorful layer underneath what you're coloring, you can, it just makes sure that you got it all. You don't have to do that. It's just one of the things that I do. We're making this cartoon go flush up against the table. And let's do his tie. Remember how we made it all one color first, and then we went and added those shadows. So I haven't started blending yet, and that's why I still have the hard brush. So when we start to blend, we want to go to our soft brush. I like to start softly. See how it kind of comes off soft at the top? And then when we come down, we can start to increase the pressure of the digital pen. just kind of doing vertical light strokes from bottom to top. And then I'm going to erase where the table is. There we go. And that way the tie doesn't overlap with the table. In fact, I'm going to just do a few strokes like this and it'll go over the table, but we're going to take that out. I'm going to put a little bit of this in. We're just creating some shadow of the tie. And then we'll erase where we started. And that way there's no overlap of the tie. We'll be putting line work around the table. So for now, we'll just do this. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and hide this layer now because I don't really need it anymore. I really only pull that up so that I can see that I've properly covered an area. And the reason why that's important is if you ever decide after you're done doing a huge detailed drawing, if you ever want to add scenery or a background, at least you won't have to go back in and correct all the areas that were overlooked. Because when you're dealing with a background, you know, it might show through areas that were forgotten. So let's take a look at this so far. Starting to look like an illustration. I'm pressing this sort of marquee tool, and I'm going to just select this area that went over the edge, and I'm going to delete it. And Control D, deselect, and now it just kind of fits in there. I can fill in the rest of his suit and maybe put something there a little later. I might even make him taller and make everyone else a little bit taller. We can always change that. Remember I said that you could be dynamic with a group? We can highlight this, where just the name of the folder, the part with the folder, not these, just this one. And if you lift it, you move the whole thing. See? It'll move the whole thing together like it's one piece. The thing is, I've kind of done the bottom of his suit so that it frames the the conference table, so I'll probably just leave it like that. Let's take a look at these other ones. Alright, so before we do them, I just want to do the smudging technique, and then we'll add highlights on him. And then we'll say that Don Jr. is done, and then we'll move on to the rest. So for the smudging technique, I like to go to the original document, the original image that we chose of him, and we press on this Smudge Tool. Put the strength around between 20 and 35. And what we'll do is we're going to smudge away some of this detail in his scruff of his face. Just light, short strokes. And we're going to do his ear too. Anything that might show a blemish or hair or markings on a face. This helps smooth it out so it looks more even tone. We're going to go and make the brush a little smaller as we do it. Then I'm just kind of going over his neck. I like to do very short strokes, and with there I was using my mouse instead of my pen, but we're going to go back to the pen now. And we're going to do big strokes now. There we go. So what I'm doing is blending. Oops. So we're going to go to M, and we're just blending the original photo. We've blended out his face. It is no longer an original picture that we're dealing with. It is a little different. And if we want to take a look at the layers, here's what we're dealing with. If we remove the line layer, it'll look like that. If we move the color layer, and then this color layer. Here's without. This is what we've added to this. We can now blend these two. So to blend two layers together, do Control E. And now those two color layers, we'll just call it color now instead of color 2. I like to have like a line, a color, original, those three. And so having 4 is kind of unnecessary now that we've blended them. So we're going to go ahead and add the highlight. We're going to go to B, white. And when I'm dealing with highlights, I like to have sort of a calligraphy tip. So to do that, we're going to use our, I've got one already ready, the hard elliptical. So let's take a look at this one. We're going to brush settings, and you can look at the settings. I'm going to actually tilt this. So when I say calligraphy tip, I mean the roundness should be under 100%. You can do 70, 80. We'll make this around 70. The angle, you kind of want it to be in the 60s and 70s or the 90s. You kind of want it like in this area, in the 120 area, and in the 70, 60 area, like this way or this way. Sort of north-northwest or north-northeast. You can't go wrong with 66. We're going to put this on white. I'm going to go ahead and make a new brush set so I can remember it. We're going to call this highlight. Okay. And now I'm going to make a new layer. We're going to put this above the line layer, and that way when we add a highlight, it won't conflict with any lines. And you can kind of see how we're kind of giving it a little bit of a cartoon highlight look. And we're going to color his lips because we haven't done that yet. And let's go change to our 9 soft because we want a soft brush. We're going to go to libraries. We're going to get that color of his lip that we saved. And we're going to add a little bit of dark red, sort of brown color. When you're dealing with lips, it's okay to use colors of the face when you're kind of giving it color. I'm pressing X to make it toggle between the foreground and the background. We're now, so you can go D, X. I like to press D to get to the foreground color, and then I press X to toggle. We're going to go to layers, make sure we're on highlight, and then we're going to make this brush go to the highlight that we made right here. And when you're making a brush preset, notice there's little colors right here. Those are preset. So if you have a specific color you want to go back to besides white or black, or you can create brown, green, lots of different colors. I'm going to change this brush, this highlight that I had. I'm going to go in here and we're going to make it go this way. And we're going to make the roundness about 60. Make a new brush. We're going to call this highlight 2. The reason we want to change the brush is, you know, when you're dealing with cheeks, you kind of want to have a really nice, I don't know, it just kind of looks like it has a nice little slant coming from the eye over the cheek like that. And the same thing with the forehead. Now I'm going to press erase, and we're going to erase part of the highlight we've already made. And just kind of do it like that. And that way it looks a little bit more realistic while still creating that really hyper fantasy. Because, you know, no one's face really has that kind of highlight around it. It's just enough. Just enough to say, hey, we have a little bit of light on there. And the same thing here. See if we can delete it and it doesn't delete all the color that we put under it because it's on a different layer. And do the same thing here on the ear. And the way that we made this new brush, it really just goes well with ears and corners, curves. If we wanted to do a curve here, we might want to use a different brush, but we don't really need to. It's fine the way it is. I don't like that, so we'll just delete it. And then let's do a little line here. Let's make it a little bit longer. How about that? And then we'll erase part of the line. Maybe not that much. See how that just looks too crazy? It's too wide and on the edge. We're going to just erase some of those edges. I don't know if I like it there. We'll just remove the whole thing. We don't really need a highlight there. So all I did is press Control Z, Control Z, Control Z. I'm gonna go and make a new snapshot in a second. But first, let's add a little bit more highlight in his hair. I'm pressing M. M just smudges it a little bit. I'm gonna do it again. Right here, a little bit of brush. We're gonna blend it again. We're pressing B to brush again. We're adding just a little bit of white in his hair. And then we're gonna press M and we're gonna just fade it a little bit. All right. Now let's zoom out and take a look. Looking good. We're gonna go ahead and add a new layer called hash. And this is where I like to do sort of final black hash lines. So we'll do here, here, here. All right. I'm not sure what I'm going to do at the bottom yet. I'm just going to leave it like that for now and save it. And then we're going to make a new history here, new snapshot. So Don Jr.'s sort of done. We're going to go ahead and move on to the next person. But you can kind of see what we've done. And what we could do to make him look even more original is we can lower the opacity of the original. at 90. If we go too light, I mean, now he's like really original now, right? Because he's not, there's nothing under him. This is completely, we might want it a little bit less. Maybe like that. We're gonna zoom out, take a look. So we're saving it. We're gonna go ahead and put that in there. We'll start on Jared Kushner. And we're gonna, I guess we don't really need to hide Don Jr. We're gonna have him still showing so we can see. We don't wanna waste our time painting an area that we're not gonna need. So we're gonna call this color. And again, we're gonna make a new group for this one too. We're making a line layer. Line color, Jared Kushner. We're gonna highlight all of those, go to new group from layers. We're gonna call this Jared. Okay. And now we can start with the line work. We're gonna zoom in on Jared Kushner. And we're gonna erase the original a little bit more before we get started, because do you see this line that goes through Donald Jr.'s face right here and right here? We're gonna be erasing that. We don't want that showing. Alright, now I'm gonna just briefly hide Don Jr. just to make sure I got all of this. So we don't want Jared Kushner coming through. Alright, so now that we have that, we're gonna go ahead and go to our line. We're gonna press B for brushes. We're gonna go to our brushes, go to 3 cartoon, go to layers, go to line. We're gonna zoom in to Jared, zoom in. I like to start usually with the hair or the forehead. And there's something here that's bothering me. I don't know if that's... Okay, it must be on the original. Let's go to Trump Jr. for a minute. We're gonna go to his original and we're gonna erase that part. His original picture was coming through outside the line and that was bothering me. Here's another way to check. Alright, so we're gonna go back to Jared, we're gonna go to line, we're gonna zoom in. Remember, when you're doing close-ups, you really want to zoom in when you're doing line work especially. When you're finishing up a line that has been started, I don't usually like to start where I last left off. I usually like to start about 3/4 of an inch from where I last left off. This is also a technique that tattoo artists use. It helps keep a line straight. I'm going to start from the bottom because I don't always like to do my lines from where they last left off.